So, what day was it? Today. When I was just going through the hallways in Mentor SDL, as I was rounding the corner towards 13, I heard F really pretty loudly, and I go over. I didn't hear a redirect, so I was curious what was happening. Okay. And I might not have been close enough to hear that, but and I noticed, so Jordan and Jacqueline like come out of the room. The kids in McClure's room are in circle. McClure's in circle with them. There's a lot of like buzz and just like students making comments to each other, and I didn't know, couldn't tell you all the language of it, but the tone was like a little nasty, if that makes sense, just like the way kids sometimes like tease or saying things. And then McClure said, okay, I want everyone to like take a deep breath, like, so that was his voice that I heard into the room. And then Jacqueline and Jordan stepped out and were like, we just need a moment. I said, okay. I like kept going. Then I set up over here at the high table, and at some point later in the block, maybe 30 minutes later, Jordan and Jacqueline come out, and I'm like, and asked me, can they have a separate space? I said, what happened? And they said, when they tried to re-enter the room, then students were like giving them a hard time about coming back in and saying like, no, get back out of the group, go back outside. Yeah. That's what they said. And then Jordan said like, and I told them what they needed to hear. It was basically how she said it. And she said, I told them, no, if we come back, like we should be able to step back and come back in. And, and I said, did Mr. McClure talk to you all about it at all? They said no. And they just like, overall, no, he didn't like address the situation. Then they asked, could they go to the front? And he said yes. So, I think the things that I noticed and I'm thinking about are like, it didn't feel safe. Like if I'm a kid, like I don't know that my mentor protected the space in there. Like, and I think about that moment in circle, like there is a circle strategy around like not redirecting, not putting every like when kids are like bubbling up a little bit, but this was different because it was like disrespectful language from one kid to another. So I think there was a missed opportunity for the mentor to intervene. And then I don't know what kind of follow-up Dan had with them, but I think like harm was done. So there's like restoring of some sort, whether that's like McClure talking to even Jordan and Jacqueline and making sure them seeing like him reflecting on his need to hold the space, or in what way they need to like circle up as groups. I don't know the exact answer to that. I just do know that like not everyone belongs in there now, and the way students talk to one another was not appropriate and was not addressed. So I wanted to share that with you, and then think about like
what are
how
steps?
What are you thinking?
I have a quick question for you. Did Dan, or to your knowledge, did Dan ever address Jordan and Jacqueline separately?
Not that I know of. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it looked like Jacqueline was like being a support to Jordan, and they just I don't even know. I couldn't tell even what sort of approval they had in that moment to step out. I didn't I didn't hear it. Which is not to say it didn't exist, but I just didn't get the impression there was a lot of like very clear boundaries, instruction from him, what to do. Like when they both stepped out, they just were immediately like on their phones there. And I actually think rewinding, it's possible like they shouldn't have even necessarily stepped out. You know, I know you're managing, like it probably wasn't the right moment for Jacqueline, or say Jordan truly needed to step out and take a moment. Like how she steps out or steps to the side, and like does it say without a phone, or does it but like with intent to check in with you or check in with an adult, versus like I think about some of the moments last year where he frequently had like kids checking in with each other outside of that room 13. It seems like he has a method where like when kids tell him they need to talk outside, they do that. They do that, and they do that with their friend, and that
Right. So my first question for you, I'm thinking about like location and time. So originally, the only time that works in both of our schedules tomorrow is lunch, and I'm listening to I'm like hearing about the incident, and as we're gonna start brainstorming, it seems like that is not the appropriate time or the place, because it would be like a walk and talk as we do supervision. So I'll reschedule that meeting. And then my second question...
you did like put time on his calendar for that?
Well, he said the only time available during lunch, and I said, okay, let's check in during that time. We didn't put time on anyone's calendar during that time because I didn't know the extent of the conversation that we would have. But I can reschedule it. The only thing is then there would be a little bit of a delay because it's not until Friday.
Yep.
But let me brainstorm ways to make it sooner.
Well, I could see one of two things. Like, I do think you could intervene both with the girls themselves and like check in, you know, use your role to make sure they're okay, and use your role to like observe for a moment and just like assess the space and like, while I want him to apply it, it's first thing tomorrow morning. So unless you were able to meet with him tomorrow morning, then we're talking about like for the next day and for future days and sort of like a few Band-Aids, and then just talking to him about it and coaching and thinking about like what about how he's managing his room is like coaching feedback and needs to happen, and that probably it's survivable till
It's not ideal though. Like, I think if you were in my shoes, would you have the meeting tomorrow morning?
I think I might, you know, like I think we have to be careful about teacher time and what we ask of them, but I might share. Does he know that the thing you want to talk about is like what happened during Mentor SDL?
Yeah, but I didn't say like I had like learned a lot about it, so I think there's some space for me to say like I have learned more about it, and I want to talk through a little bit like how students plan to re-enter your classroom today.
I wonder if it were me, maybe I would message him, say like, you know, hey, the thing I was looking, you know, today was full. The thing I'm really looking to talk to you about is the experience that Jordan and like what happened that led to Jordan and Jacqueline stepping out, what that experience was like when they stepped out, how they re-entered, and what that was like that led to them ultimately needing to like not be in the space of your classroom. I want to make sure they are ready. They are ready, and that the classroom is a safe space tomorrow. That's a very tight turnaround. Would you be able to check in at 7:45? Okay. If not, but maybe like pose that as an option, but then also pose the like, if not, here's one else. And so, and then also, if not, I think we should like, we'll practice the feedback. But I think like a plan B needs to be, if we can't deliver the feedback in person, I think you can also give email feedback about like the quick fixes that he then needs to apply. And you can go to his room in the moment and give in the moment feedback too. Some of this could happen that way versus the 7:45.
Okay. So I think that you and I have talked a lot about like how I need to be more direct with my feedback. So in terms of like what I'm planning, or like how we're practicing and planning, I think if I could practice with you like giving that direct feedback, I think that would be really helpful.
Let's map that out. Do you find when you prepare for the feedback that you give, like, do you want a moment to like script for yourself? Do you want to like on the spot role play, like try it and pretend I'm Dan and then just like get feedback and go again? So for first round, do you want to script first? Do you want to dive in?
Well, I trust you, so I'm just happy to try it.
Okay.
But the key points.
What are you going for? Yeah. What are your outcomes?
The key points are, so I think a couple of assumptions will be he hasn't checked in with Jordan and Jacqueline, and he didn't address the class after the incident happened, or whatever he did to address it was not impactful. So
can I actually interrupt there? Because I actually think, so you're saying it sounds like you're like choosing to give feedback based on those assumptions. We actually don't know if those are true or not. So I think like assessing, you actually need a way to assess that, because otherwise you're like hypothesis about how to give the feedback is going to be off. What is true, like the things that we know are true are that things that there was an interaction when they first stepped out, and there was an interaction when they came back in that led to them not feeling safe in the room. So those things like are true and are not assumptions. And so there's like feedback around those, and that like there was a you can use the word missed opportunity, but like in his role in that moment, I think you then have to gather information about whether or not he how he has responded, because he may have said something to the class about how it's not. And when you think about what you're coaching towards here, because I almost wonder, maybe I'm making an assumption that you were getting at like, how does he prepare for their reentry? Was that true? Or what are you driving towards?
I think I'm driving towards like giving the direct feedback around like we've seen like the struggle with classroom management happen for over a year now. And while in some instances there's been growth, like there have now been a few instances where it's like impacted some sort of safety. And it seems like, and maybe I could frame it as like, I am curious about like, what is your perception around how this incident, one, impacted the two students, but also like, what could you have done better in this situation to ensure that students felt safe re-entering the classroom? Okay. And what are your next steps?
Cool. And knowing that for him on like the skill will, sometimes the skill, like, are you going in with a possible answer to the, what do you do to prevent it? Or like, what are the teacher moves that you do expect he should be doing?
I hadn't thought that far ahead, but that seems like something I should plan for.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think, and that's what I think globally, I agree that like, I like the way you're like tying it back to the past incidences of safety. There's like when you think about the takeaways that you're going for, I hear a desire for him to like feel that this matters, to recognize that he has ownership over the classroom, and when he like fails to make certain moves, it really impacts kids. That's a feeling and a larger takeaway. And then there's a more granular needed outcome of like, what teacher moves does he do differently in the moment to prevent that from happening, or to respond and address students when it does. It's going to be both ultimately. And so knowing that you're driving, if that's what you're driving to, and that he may not know, I think probably in your back, like you actually probably know those things. And so you probably could share too, but do you have any initial thoughts? Like when you think about this instant of like students, maybe if we try to categorize the issue, or like, and maybe you want to have him tell back the issue, like students speak to each other disrespectfully. What do we do about that? What do you think? What should he be doing that he's not?
I think that there is, like, again, when I think about the MTSS triangle, which you can apply to literally everything in life, like to me, there's a huge missed opportunity in making sure that the norms are really clear and upheld consistently, which is something that is really challenging. And if I zoom in even further to a norm around respectful language, I think that there is an opportunity for him to just hammer that norm in for like an extended period of time, and then you really use the GDP specifically to address respectful language. I think that's like one example of how you can like.
No, I think that sounds great, because like who knows if he kicked off Circle with like concrete reminders of the norms to be held in Circle, but like if he didn't, which you could use a question to assess, that's exactly the strategy that like the good teachers are, or like the proficient teachers are going to be doing, is like consistently reminding students of the norms, and then choosing to address that. I don't think happened. Okay. So I think drive towards that.
Okay.
You want to practice? You want to just
yes. Okay.
Go for it.
Ready.
Okay. Let me do my best, Dan.
I was pretending to be Brian and Vanessa's coaching today. It was really funny.
Oh, fine.
Okay. Hey Dan, thanks for meeting with me this morning. I really appreciate your flexibility. And I want to talk to a little bit about like what happened during Circle yesterday. I heard a little bit of the account of like Reilly, who was able to intervene in the situation while it was happening. I haven't had a chance to check in with the two students yet, and I am really curious to hear a little bit more, like what were the events that led up to the two students walking out, and have you been able to check in with them since then?
Yeah, Jordan was just having a hard day, and she needed a moment, and so I wanted to, like, it didn't seem like she could be ready for Circle, and she wanted Jacqueline as a support, so they stepped out, and I gave them that time, and then, like, they came back in, and I think, like, they, like, some kids said some stuff to them, they said some stuff back, and they decided they didn't want to be in the classroom, so they went and worked elsewhere, and I haven't talked to them since then, but I was thinking I'll talk to them, like, when they come back tomorrow morning. This morning.
Right. Can you talk me through a little bit around like why you haven't checked in with them yet?
I mean, I was like teaching all day, so I just hadn't had the chance to. That's why I would like check in today when I see them.
Okay. So one of the things I want to talk about is the fact that like those two students are going to be re-entering a space, and it's this morning with you and your mentor group, and it seems like when they exited the space last, or they attempted to like re-enter the mentor room, it was met with some level of hostility. What was the conversation that happened when Jordan and Jacqueline tried to come into the room and it wasn't received very well? Like, did you have a conversation with your mentor group?
I just like, I just tried to get them back onto circle and like told everybody, okay, let's all take a deep breath. Like, let's all come back together and like refocus like away from that and like back to what we should be doing.
Okay. Was there ever an explicit conversation around your mentor group's reaction to the two students re-entering?
No, I think I might have said like, don't, said a student's name, but we didn't like have a full group conversation.
Can you talk me through like why you made that decision?
I don't know. I guess I just like didn't think of that in that moment.
Okay. Thanks for sharing. I'm feeling a little worried. And the reason I'm feeling a little bit worried is like a huge part of our responsibility as the adults in the building. And our number one responsibility is to make sure our students feel safe. And that's like they feel physically safe in our space and they feel mentally safe in our space as well. I'm thinking a little bit about like two incidents from last year that really stand out to me. Like one where there's a student in your classroom who like didn't need you to take proper attendance. And had been in your classroom for an extended period of time. And then I'm thinking about the incident with a student and like two students that led to a number of parent meetings over the summer. I'm also thinking about like how hard you're working to make sure you're doing your best to like execute this year in a really strong way and how much your mentor group means to you. And with all those thoughts in my mind, I really want to now start talking about what is the impact of what happened yesterday with Jordan and Jacqueline attempting to re-enter and you not intervening in that moment, and like what are the next steps that we need to do to make sure that those two students who left that space can now feel comfortable walking back into it. There's a couple of teacher actions within that we're going to have to like circle back on and make sure are happening appropriately in the classroom. So let's start with what was my first thing that I said? I think I said the first thing that I want to talk about, like what do you think is the impact of you not redirecting the entire mentor group in the moment that they began to react negatively to Jordan and Jacqueline?
A little confused about the question.
Yeah, thank you for asking me to clarify. I'm assuming that Jordan and Jacqueline feel some type of way about them attempting to come back into the classroom and feeling like they didn't have a space in that room anymore. From what you're telling me is while you did a minor redirection of one student, you did not address the entire class. What do you think is the impact of you not addressing the entire class in that moment?
Okay. I'm going to put us like time out and see. Okay. Initial I have some thoughts and feedback, but I want to hear from you first, just about knowing the outcome you're going for. And I know we didn't get to finish, but in your initial setup, like how are you feeling? Or in what ways do you think you like met that, didn't meet that, would have wanted to do something?
Okay, well, I think I'm more direct than I usually am, which I'm really pushing myself to be. I don't think I would have been able to have this conversation like a week ago. I think that it still feels like I'm not getting to the point though.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me like can I tell you what I would cut out?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of like rehashing of like what happened, but like I already kind of know what happened and I don't really want to go into that anymore. Like there are a couple of missing pieces and I think I want to go straight into filling in those missing pieces.
Yep. What would that sound like, for example?
So I think that would sound like, this is what I know that happened.
Yes.
What happened
What
before.
Would you name?
So I would name that there seemed to have been like the F word really loudly from your class. Two students walked out and needed a space. When the two students attempting to walk back in, they were met with like some level of hostility, and it sounded like in that moment there wasn't any redirection from you. What am I missing in the story? And so I think after going over that, like making sure I understand the facts or like this retelling of what happened, to go straight into talking about like our responsibilities as the adults in the building. Do you feel like that statement sounded too intense, right in line?
No, I don't remember when you said that.
Okay.
Which might be a little bit of feedback there was a stretch, and I think even why I was confused on the question is like you talked for a while.
Time. Yeah.
But let's pause, because I think you're getting at something key on the front end, and so let's actually do it chunk by chunk,
cool.
And get to that. Like, we'll address directness of feedback giving, cool. and then driving towards those two separate outcomes. But I think you're totally right. Like, if I'm Dan, I was laughing, like, when you say that was, no, I'm not laughing about length, I'm laughing at laughing about that being a week's worth more direct than last week, because I was like, that was not direct. Yeah. It just was.
Okay, good to know.
And here were a couple, and I think you're there. You said the things, you already know it, but so that you know, so maybe some of the language, I'm going to try not to repeat it that way. You said, like, you know, I heard some things from Miss Reilly. So there was vagueness. Like, I think you're right. You were vague both about that, or even like, when referencing the two past incidences that happened, like the one, and then you said like, and the incident that happened in your room that like led to lots of parent meetings, like just which one? Like a student threw a bottle and broke a student's teeth. Yeah. So I'm not, let's actually set that aside for a moment, but like that difference in directness. So yes, saying like, sure, you weren't there, but like you directly got the feedback from me and you saw the two students out. So like, you know, you're not totally out of, like, you can say like, I know, like, Miss Reilly stopped at your room because she heard the F word said loudly, went over and saw like an exchange, you know, and even saw this exchange between students, even that shift from just like generally hostile to naming the actions that were said of like students making comments towards other students. One small detail piece is like, I stood at the door and I was observing and I didn't hear a redirect then. I heard him say, and like, but I don't 100%, you know, I don't know if there was like nonverbal redirect. I heard him transition to breathing. The second part where they tried to re-enter the room after like 20 minutes, I wasn't there for. So those are two separate things. But like, I think what you know from the students is that students that like the two girls like felt that they did not belong in your class. They came to the front, they asked for another space to work because when they tried to re-enter the space, they said students were hostile towards them. So that all is like factual from their perspective. So yeah, I think that's it. Like it's got to be even way more direct. Otherwise it comes off as like, what is this person even, what are you thinking? Yeah.
Which is so interesting because I think about the simulation that we did and like that was literally my problem. Like I was so not direct. It took me like 20 minutes to get to like a baseline point.
Yeah. So it's like naming the facts that are true. I liked your question of like, what am I missing? Or what am I off? You can say something like, you know, this is like perspective from Miss Reilly passing and the students, like you were an adult in the room, like what am I missing? Then I wonder, there's a component, like I'm thinking about how I cut us off before you even had a chance to drive towards the actual like change outcome. I think if you're trying to drive towards the like he feels the weight of it in the middle, it's gonna get wordy and messy. Like I think there may be a need to drive immediately from these were the actions, they are not okay actions, there's like missing actions from you, and directly going then into teacher moves, because I think one, it's gonna raise his affective filter around like, oh, she's like throwing in these past ones. I think it's more content that you're going to have to be direct about, but like potentially struggle to. Right. So I think you can bring it home with weight around like, part of the reason I'm bringing this up is like, it worries me. And like, it's hard to see kids feel like they don't belong in their room. And there've been a couple incidences, like there's been an incident, like when attendance was not properly taken, or actually I think that one was more than one incident, like when students are in your room who are not supposed to be, that's a safety concern. And when a student ends up throwing something and injuring someone, even if it's accidental, that's an incident that is unsafe. And now like this was an emotionally unsafe incident. I could imagine coming to that at the end, but I think the meat of this, like the more important thing is going to be him digging into teacher action. So I wonder if we re-practice go from the start and practice the intro and then segue that in. Okay. I do wonder, because as you talked, it was making me, just from my coaching perspective, try to assess like, would you have gotten there if you had scripted? Like, would scripting help, or you just got to go for it?
I think I just got it. Okay. Yeah, I think this is helpful because it's iterative.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you good on time?
Yeah.
Of like going home. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
From the top.
Cool. Thanks for meeting with me, Dan. I want to talk a little bit about what happened yesterday. I'm going to share my observations, give you an opportunity to fill anything that's missing, and then let's talk about next steps. So I was informed yesterday that as Ms. Reilly was walking through the hallway, she heard the F word coming really loudly from your classroom, and then 2 students, Jordan and Jacqueline, walked out of the classroom. It seemed like they were checking in with each other on their cell phone when they attempted to enter back into the space. From what they've told us, it sounds like it felt like an unsafe environment for them to come back in. That's the extent of the information that I have right now. What am I missing?
Side note, not Dan Hadoff. I would just I think that was great. Minus be specific about hostile, like the language because the issue is the language kids are using towards one another is like not appropriate and attacking, and they just shouldn't have been talking in the moment. So
okay, I want to try that last part again then. And then when the 2 students attempted to enter back into the classroom, they mentioned to us that it was a hostile environment and that the way students were interacting with them, their fellow mentees were interacting with them, made them feel really uncomfortable and disrespected. So what am I missing from this scenario?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan also like said stuff back to them, but she, wanted to have space outside of the classroom, so I let them have space out, and What
were the moves that you made in the moment to redirect the entire classroom or address the hostile environment that was created for 2 students?
Like when they first went out, and I think like Reilly was standing there at the door, I just like tried to get everyone back to breathing. Like we were trying to do centering, and so I just like tried to bring it back to centering by saying like, okay, everyone take a deep breath and like get us resettled.
What was the purpose of you doing that and like not addressing the issue at hand?
I mean, that was me addressing it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. So I want to think about like what are our next steps. I am thinking about the importance of you being able to address this with your mentees because Jordan and Jacqueline will be attempting to re-enter your classroom today. And I want this to be a space where they feel like comfortable coming back and that they're not going to re-feel the hostile environment. So let's talk about like some teacher actions. So when you're thinking about your reflection of the day, what is the first moment that you feel like you could have intervened in or created a structure that wouldn't have allowed this to happen in the first place?
I'm going to facilitate our hat off again because I want to pause this when we get to moments where I think like that's actually taking it because like to role play down a direction that may be off won't be worth it. So I think great so far. Repeat what you said so far. Though I'm thinking about, you asked me, why did I choose to redirect in that way? And I said, that was my redirection. That should be triggered to you of like, okay, Dan's skill, he thought that was redirection. So, or he thought that was the way to handle it. So like, we've got a little bit of a skill issue. I would then ask him, in your head that you're driving towards his ability to go over norms on the front end. And so you need to know, did he do that? Like you need an assessment of whether or not he's doing that right now. Like, so I would ask like, when you all are in circle on Wednesdays, like, how are you setting circle norms to start the circle? So like assess where is he at with setting the norms. And then if in the second moment he doesn't have skill, that's where like, because what I noticed about the question and the reason I paused us is like that was still facilitative. Like you're still like either information gathering or trying to lead him there. And like, do you know the skill wall matrix? Do you think about? Okay, I love this paradigm, which is like every teacher. It's like x-axis is skill, y-axis is will. Will is like mindset, willingness to do it. Skill is like has the teacher tools. Someone who is like high skill and high will, you lead them there. You coach and like ask questions. And then you have to become like all the more facilitative as you head towards like, if someone is high skill, low will, you still might try to like, you still may use questions then because they've got the skills. So you're sort of drawing out of them to empower. If someone is low skill, asking questions when they don't have possible answers isn't going to lead there. And I currently assess Dan as like low skill. So I think that question of like, where is the first moment is like a timing. We know the timing. It should have happened right away. So we've got to get there. And so either you need to, asking what his moves were, and if not, saying like, I think we like weighing him through for a second, we've got to start with like, how are you norm setting? And then saying like, is there a way you set norms the first time? Like, either he does know how to set the norms, he just doesn't realize that it needs to happen every week, or he actually doesn't know how to set them every week.
Got it.
So, does that make sense?
Okay. So, rewind to...
what if you rewind to, like, the moment of, like, how come that was the moment, how come that was the way you chose to, like, address the class?
Okay, I'm going to rewind just a little bit before that. Okay. So in the moment where Jordan and Jacqueline attempted to re-enter the classroom and they were met with a hostile environment, how did you redirect the circle?
We were in centering, so I just like wanted to bring them back to breath, and I said, okay, everyone, like, take a deep breath, like, let's try to get us back on track to the circle.
Okay. When you think about, I don't know how to do this. Okay, wait, let me think.
What norm, how do you, when you're kicking off circle, like prior to centering, do you all start with norms? How do you kick off norms?
Okay, so before you start circle, do you as a class review norms?
No, like Reilly gave me feedback that it needs to be like set up in a circle, and they come in and we like jump into, you start off with centering and like, hey, get your seats, like put cell phones away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
so somewhat.
Okay. So it seems like there is a gap where students maybe are not being told like what the norms of, especially around respectful language and respectful behavior, are happening in circle. So
let's plan for that.
Let's plan for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. So Yep. I loved the way you said there is a gap. Like that was very direct. You were telling him you have a gap.
Yeah.
Great.
Cool. Okay.
And the combo of like the use of the word gap and the use of the word like respectful student language, like that is the thing. Maybe he told them to put cell phones away, but like there is a gap in ensuring that students are clear on their use of respectful language. So let's plan for that. Yeah.
Okay. So like can we move on to like the talking about like what does redirection look like? Okay. So it seems like in the incident there seemed to have been like a large group redirection that needed to happen. I am not confident that you centering them back into their breathing is a strong enough redirection to address the disrespectful language. What is what are we going to do to redirect that in a way where these two students can actually enter back into your classroom? Were there specific students in mind who actually showed this reaction, and what do you mean? Like, I'm trying to say like obviously there's a whole class thing that needs to be addressed. Are we only, is it more impactful to just give him one teacher action to work on at a time?
I think it's okay to do the combo of setup, the proactive and the addressing, and I think you were on the right track with naming, like, you didn't use the word gap this time, but you said something like, it seems like another place, like you basically were like, you have to have a way to address it. Yeah. You said that his bringing them back with breathing was not enough, was insufficient to address when like that level of disrespect happened. So again, driving towards like planning for that. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about like what it means to plan to redirect successfully a situation that does that. We also need to like repair this harm. Yeah. So it looks like right now there are 3 teacher actions that we need to do. We need to talk about like what does your norm look like, sound like in the beginning of circle? How are you redirecting student behavior when they're not meeting that norm? And how are we going to work to repair the harm that's being done with the 2 students and the rest of your mentor group?
Yeah, and I think I'm having like meta moment around like we're practicing the role play of it. Like he needs to practice the redirect, the whole class redirect.
Cool, sounds good.
Do you want to can we practice like teeing that up? So I'm still Dan, but like that you gave that framing, and then like we need to practice the
practice the redirect or the initial norm?
Either way. What's that?
I want to do all 3 of them.
Yeah.
But I think for our time right now, I think I want to do the practice the redirect. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about like how we can replay that moment and you can redirect. So let's assume that Jordan and Jacqueline just walked into the room. So Jordan and Jacqueline just walked into the room. There's a negative reaction that's happening in your classroom. Like, how are you going to redirect them?
Meta for a moment. Yeah. I might ask him, because I don't know, I might ask him, do you want to just take a bat at it? Do you want to hear a model from me? Like, I'm thinking about name it, see it, do it. Yeah. And like, I don't know if he can name a good one. And so you are a place that model could come from. But you could either give him, we're sort of like doing that in the moment, like in moments where you're like, I need you to name that, then I name it. But like, so maybe would either ask, like, I could pretend to be Dan right now and do a not great one, or like ask you, but I think if you gather that on the front end, you got to make sure he knows what he's driving towards. Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about the skill too, like the skill. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to work on is how do we redirect successfully in a moment where students are using disrespectful language towards each other and creating a not safe environment. So just so I know what you need, do you want to see a model of how to do that, or do you feel comfortable trying it out yourself?
Yeah, sure. It'd be great to hear an example. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to assume that I'm you. There seems to be some screaming that just happened. And scene. All right, Yael, I'm going to need you to step onto this side. Jordan and Jacqueline, I need you to step outside. We're going to need to pause this circle in this moment. I need everyone to go ahead and set the classroom back up into SDL. We will be returning to circle when we are ready as a community to engage together very respectfully. So give them a little bit of time to do that.
Side note, a sort of like feedback to your modeling of it. Okay. I mean, you didn't see the moment, so it might be that we're not aligned on the moment, and it's like screaming between two students. Yes, you need to like separate. In this case, it's like multiple students saying things to the, I probably wouldn't, can I model what I think I would have done in that scenario would be, okay, everyone, I'm going to raise my voice. Everyone needs to pause. Like, when we are in circle, when we're in any moment together in any classroom, in this space in our building, our norm, our expectation is that you use respectful language, and that is not happening right now. And so I need everyone to pause, to check themselves, take a deep breath, and commit to not using language, for example, that tells a student that they don't belong in the room, that tells another student what to do. I am the person who will give students the permission to step out. I am the person who will redirect students when that happens. Like, you are a student, you are a listener, and in this moment, the expectation for you is that you are seated, listening, and ready to participate in centering.
That was awesome. Okay.
So I would go, I was not perfect, but I don't think you have to like say, we can't do circle. I think it's like, how do you bring firmness? How do you bring the language of core character? How do you, and take it back? How do you take everyone back to give them feedback that it's not appropriate? Make it very clear it's not appropriate, because I think that helps protect the space for the girls and everyone. And maybe he needs to say, like, this happens far too frequently, like, and it is rude, it is mean, it's disrespectful, and it's not the kind of, like, I see you all in other moments where you're so kind to one another, and like that's not who we are right now, and it's not who we are ever going to be in this space. And then, like, based on what was happening in that moment, certainly there are gonna be times where it needs to like have a certain student step out or have a follow-up conversation with the parent, but I think it's like, how do you, in that space of circle, reset, bring back to the expectation.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, we're like getting so meta on that.
No, it's okay. It's super helpful. Okay, I'm just gonna like copy paste that model.
You're gonna, okay.
And what do you want? Do you think it would be helpful for you to see me model it for Dan, or have?
Let's try that just once. Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
So I just said like, yeah, it'd be great to see you do it.
Okay, so in this moment, Jordan and Jacqueline just attempted to walk in, and they're walking into a disrespectful atmosphere in the moment. Okay, everyone, I'm gonna need everyone's attention up here. Our goal during our time together is to make sure that we're using extremely respectful language towards each other. The point of circle and the point of us being in a mentor group together is so we're able to grow together. In this moment, what I am noticing is that we are not using respectful language towards each other. And I'm curious, no. Okay, we're not using respectful language towards each other.
Bring it back to the expectation.
Yeah. The expectation is that we are either, the expectation for our time in circle is that we are,
silent, listening, one voice.
Yeah, we are silent. We are listening respectfully to each other, and we're using our one mic norm. We have already reviewed these norms in the beginning of circle, so the expectation right now is that we are all following that. I want to encourage you, and I want to remind you that while my responsibility is to make sure that we are all a family and we're all working together, my largest responsibility is to make sure that this place is safe for every single person. And this is a norm that you need to be carrying as we move throughout this building and as you move throughout your life. We can do better than what just happened right now. So in this moment, I'm going to ask us to all pause, come back to centering, and we might be revisiting this conversation at a later time, and then bring it back to centering.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. I would then immediately ask him, so that was name it. Or that was, no, you all have named what needs to happen. That's seeing it. And I would probably ask him, like, what did you notice? Like, give him a chance to reflect on the model before he just jumps into seeing it. Yeah.
Okay. So, or like practicing it himself.
Sorry, practicing it. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. So Dan, that scene. Yeah. What did you notice in what I said?
You were really intense. You were firm in a way that's probably needed in those moments. I also noticed you like referenced the fact that I would have gone over norms in the morning. And you also like didn't call any one person out. You just really like addressed the group, but ended like positively, drew on how connected our group is too.
Okay. Because I do notice the connectedness, and this is a really unique opportunity for you to build on that positivity that already exists in the mentor group. So this is an opportunity for you to practice it. So I am going to be the rest of your circle, and Jordan and Jacqueline just attempted to walk in. Do you need a moment to think about the key points that you want to say, or are you ready to jump right in?
Let's try jumping in.
Okay, great. And scene.
I'm not going to practice as Dan, but I could, but I don't know if I would get him right. Okay. Yeah. And then give feedback. I think similarly to how I gave you the choice of like, do you want to practice on the spot or script? And then when it didn't go great the first time, I was like, should we script it? But you said no, and I want to trust that. Like, but I could see, and I think that's working for us in this moment. But if you notice that it's like just really not meeting the mark, I think in a way you're doing what we're doing right now, which is either like breaking down in chunks, but probably I could see ultimately scripting like maybe necessary for him as the way to get there. Yeah. I
am thinking a little bit about like if there is going to be some practice involved. Yeah. So under the assumption that the meeting is from 7:45 to like 8 probably. Yeah. It's probably not
that's not
enough time. Yeah. And so I am thinking about perhaps my like the items that I need to be doing tomorrow morning need to be like I don't want to do the Band-Aid honestly. Yeah. But in order for it to be like impactful and like long-lived, it seems like it needs to be during coaching.
Yeah, and I also think what we're talking about, we're talking in some ways specific to Circle.
Right.
But in a way that we then hope he applies to other settings too. Yeah. Though I think that I think I've now had multiple weeks of evidence that his Circle has like a rockier, more chaotic start than others. Like that first week where how many times have we had Circle? 3. Yeah. But like, and 2 of the 3 weeks and the 2 times I've seen him, his group is like that. And so like, whereas I think what I've observed of Mentor SDL is more okay and silent. And so in some ways I do think that our leeway is like Wednesday to Wednesday, and it is okay. You want to make sure that Jordan, you can use your admin role to like make sure they're okay to be back in the space. But like, I think it'd be different if they were all about to sit in Circle tomorrow, but they're not. So you have a little bit of time.
Okay. Yeah. So then I think I'm going to have like our coaching meeting is going to be directly about this, which is Friday morning. Okay. So
I think the hope then that like he should apply his ability to set norms to other structures too. That's where it goes from there. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. This is super helpful.
Okay.
It's so helpful.
Good.
It's so crazy. I like think I'm being direct, and then I hear you tell me like which parts to take out, or like ask me which parts I should take out.
Yeah.
It's like editing a paper. You can always make it more succinct.
Yeah.
And so it's making me, it's just making me think differently about the way I communicate. I think my one area that I would like, I'm curious on what you think is like, I sometimes worry that when I'm being too direct, I'm being really intense with my tone. And I don't know if that like shuts people out from feeling like they can even enter the conversation. This is like feedback my dad has given me. Yeah. So
how are you experiencing my tone and my directness with you right now.
I don't feel like I can enter the conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like.
So, I mean, obviously, like, my relationship with you is not necessarily your relationship with Dan, but, like, I think I'm being direct and I'm, like, cutting you off and I'm like, no, that's not working, you know, and, like, and I think at moments my tone's even a little more intense and, like, that's okay, you know, like, we're growing together. And so I think it's creating a space where it's, like, not impacting your engagement. And so I would hope for you and Dan the same thing, that, like, because you've invested in relationship, he knows that that's what you're driving towards.
Okay.
And, like, it's okay for it to feel more intense.
Okay.
Like, rip that Band-Aid. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
If it doesn't go well, then we'll reflect on that and make sense of why. But, like, I don't think the answer is that it becomes less direct.
Agreed.
So.
Yeah. That ship has, like, way sailed.
Yes. Yeah. Do you think, when you think about, well, I'll share this video with you. I was thinking about, like, how, in a way, we weren't taking notes, but you do have the video as, method, just in terms of how you, if it's not going to be till Friday, how you remember. Because you had some very key phrases that in this moment were great. And I know it can then be, like, hard to replicate, and Dan's going to show, who knows, you know, exactly what it'll look like. But
yeah, I think I'm gonna like, I'm not gonna watch it because that's weird, but like I am gonna listen to it again, which is like really similar to how I used to prep for my lessons, like record myself, listen to it again, script it, etc.
Great.
So I think that's my plan, especially because there were some like key things like saying gap. That was really important.
Yep.
Respectful student language. I think so. I want to make sure that like I want to practice that as well. To make sure I get the point across.
Cool.
So.
And what time? When's your coaching with him?
It's supposed to be Friday morning, like first block, Friday first block.
Okay, cool.
I'm pretty sure.
I won't be here. I wish I would be here too.
Oh, Friday second block, something like that.
Yeah, to debrief. But like when, I mean, I'd love to even maybe when we're doing like XPD reads results, we can debrief, just like talk through it. Or when I come out of anesthesia, talk about it later in the day on Friday.
Or I'll just text you as soon as it happens. You can read it when
please do it, but I just won't be as responsive. Yeah. Okay. Cool.